Welcome to Hidden History, Stories from the Secret City. I'm Ray Smith. A co-host, Keith McDaniel, is not able to be with us today. He's not feeling good. So we're going to run this one with just me here, and I have a guest with me. Mark Zimmerman is here, and we're going to talk with Mark about a book that he's about ready to publish, I believe.
Yeah.
Mark, I appreciate knowing you, and I thank you for letting me have a look at your book early on. Glad to have you with us today.
Well, I'm glad to be here. And I think you are the best person to look at my book since you're the expert and historian on Oak Ridge.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciated the opportunity. Let's talk a little bit about how you came to even want to write the book. Give us a little of your background and what brought you to the point of thinking you'd like to write Atomic Express.
Okay. I'm retired. I'm a publications manager, or was, and as a matter of fact, I worked at the Oak Ridger back in 1978, 79, under Dick Smizer.
Okay.
Um, and it was a fantastic experience. And I ended up being the science and technology reporter there. I got a job offer and at another place, and my last day at the Oak Ridger was on Thursday, and 2 days before that was 3 Mile Island.
Wow.
And I would have gone to Washington and covered all the hearings and everything, but that's why I call myself the master of bad timing. But since my retirement, I've written 8 history books, all nonfiction, most of them about either about Nashville or the Civil War. But I did write a book called The Zone, and it has 50 chapters about 50 different subjects, and one of those chapters is building the atomic bomb. And I did a lot of research on that. And in doing that research, I found out the basically the nexus of what Atomic Express is. And I've always wanted to try my hand at historical fiction. So I thought I would. And here we are now. I pretty much finished the manuscript and made some very needed corrections that you suggested, and tried to make it as factual as I could. It's kind of a little bit over the top, but there's nothing in there that's not humanly possible. So I had a lot of fun writing it, and I hope people have a lot of fun reading it.
Hmm. Good. Let me pick up on something you said and just for a minute talk about Dick Smizer.
All right.
You indicated you worked for him. I have a story that I tell everyone who comes to Oak Ridge. I tell them about how Oak Ridge was selected, and I use the Senator McKellar story and and indicate that President Roosevelt asked Senator McKellar if he could hide some money that he needed to put toward the war effort. And Senator McKellar said, "Yes, Mr. President, I can do that for you. Just where in Tennessee are you going to put that thing?"
All right.
So I had the opportunity to interview Senator Howard Baker. A few of us went up there from Oak Ridge. And did you ever know Jim Campbell, who worked at? He may have been after your time. He
That doesn't really ring a bell, no.
Okay, he worked at the Oak Ridge too, and but probably later than you. I'm not sure. But at any rate, he was with us, and he asked the senator. We set up the camera and put him behind his desk up in Scott County there in Huntsville, and he said, "Okay, Senator, tell us about your connection to Oak Ridge." And he said, "Let me first tell you about how this place was chosen. Oak Ridge was chosen." And he went into that Senator McKellar story in the most flamboyant way you've ever seen. And when he got through, I said, "Thank you, Senator, for putting on video the story that I tell everyone who comes to Oak Ridge." He said, "Where did you get that story?" I said, I got it from Dick Schmeiser, longtime editor of the local newspaper there, the Oak Ridger. He said,
Wow.
that's where I got it too.
Yeah, I tell
So
you
the
what.
origin of that story that I literally tell everyone is
Uh-huh.
is Dick Schmeiser. So, well, that's a neat thing.
He he
So
probably
I'm sure
knew.
you have memories of working for him.
Oh yeah, he was one of my best editors. He was a taskmaster.
Yeah.
I at one time I saw him make a reporter cry because he wouldn't take no for an answer, you know. Uh, and so, but he was very demanding, but he was very fair, and I learned a lot working for the Oak Ridger. Plus the fact that our audience was probably the largest density of PhDs in the world, so we had to get it right, you know,
Had to be careful, didn't
had to
you?
know what we were talking about. And I got promoted to the science and technology reporter, and I know he kind of had a hard time with that because I didn't have a 100% solid science background, but I had enough, and I think I convinced him. And after a few weeks, I kind of settled in a little bit. And I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a professional historian either, but I managed to to manage to get by.
Well, where did you go when you left Oak Ridge?
I went back to Middle Tennessee, where gosh, I can't count how many small newspapers I worked on. Hendersonville, Mount Juliet, Gallatin. Started our own newspaper in Mount Juliet. Did that for about 5 years. I've done just about everything except sell advertising. Thank God I didn't have to do
Didn't
that.
have to do that.
But around 1990, I became a publications editor for a law enforcement agency and did that for almost 30 years. Did
Oh,
criminal intelligence bulletins and special research reports and that sort of thing, which was very interesting. And that was good for a lot of background. The book I'm writing on now is kind of a crime, historical fiction crime book.
okay.
But the book Atomic Express has a little bit of everything in it. As I guess, as you know, it's crammed with a lot of history, and
Yes.
Oak Ridge history is just fascinating, and people don't realize. But when I was researching for this other article, I came across how they transported enriched uranium from Oak Ridge to Los Alamos.
Mhm.
And I thought that can't be true. I mean, that's so
In briefcases in a passenger train.
and then they said, I asked around and they said there were no real incidents or anything. And I thought that can't be true either. So the book is about an actual true incident of what happened during one of those trips that the government has suppressed all these years.
All right. Well, that'll be good. We'll leave that for folks to read in your book.
And I hope the book does not disparage the legitimate work of everyone at Oak Ridge. Just It's just a phenomenal engineering story
Oh,
of
it is. Yeah.
people. Yeah.
And I actually came across documentation of one of the couriers that actually carried that material.
Wow.
He had some very specific guidelines to follow as he took the material and got on the train and went to Chicago and then handed it off to the ones that were going to take it out to Lemmy, New Mexico, and then drive it up to Los Alamos.
Right.
It's an intriguing and interesting thought just to think about how that material got transported. And I know folks will enjoy what you've included in Atomic Express.
Well, to me, it probably was the most precious material on earth at
It
that
was.
time.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
priceless, priceless. But
Yeah, it was so much so that they would not let it be hand carried across the street. They would put it in a vehicle to move it. So you got
yeah, yeah.
to,
And
and then here this guy is with you know, coffee cup size gold line containers inside a briefcase, taking
and
it on a passenger train.
one of the things that fascinated me was that there were tons and tons of ore that would come in on railroad cars,
Yeah.
and they ended up using, I think, about 140 pounds in the bomb of
Right.
enriched uranium. And then they calculated that only about 1 gram was actually activated in the explosion. So,
So
yeah.
it is tremendous when you stop and think about it,
Mhm.
about all of the effort that it took to get that less than a gallon in volume amount
Right.
of uranium that could be used 235 that could be used for a bomb. And remember, that's why Great Britain came to the United States and said, look, we know you can make a bomb out of uranium 235, but it's so difficult to separate, get that little 0.7% out of
Mhm.
that ore that we don't have the resources to do that. So you make the bomb and we'll send our scientists over to help. And that's exactly what happened.
Well,
The collaboration between Great Britain and the United States.
right. People
But
don't re people
uh,
don't realize that. Yeah.
they don't realize that over the course of the entire Manhattan Project effort, there were 600,000 people involved. Now, not at one time. They come and went and, transferred through here and there and hired and went on. At the most, I believe there were about 80,000 people working at Oak Ridge and there was 75,000 people living here. But that was the peak
Hmm.
during the war years, but over the entirety of the Manhattan Project,
Hmm.
600,000 people got
Well,
involved
I
there.
had read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a Soviet spy or agent
Yes,
at Oak Ridge who ended up in
yeah,
Los Alamos. And according to the information that he gathered, the Soviets concluded that they would not make a uranium bomb. They would just
right.
go with plutonium because it was easier.
Yeah, and actually there were two scientists. Klaus Fuchs was at Los Alamos, and he's the one that gave the plans of Fat Man to Russia, to Stalin. But George Koval was in Oak Ridge.
Hmm.
And Putin just gave a posthumous award to him, the highest
Yeah.
award
Yeah.
that Russia has. And what he did is he gave the information about Oak Ridge and the uranium processing, how difficult it was. And I believe between the two, Klaus Fuchs giving them the plans to Fat Man and George Koval telling them how extensive the effort would be to get the uranium, I think that's what caused Stalin to say, look, just build a replica of this Fat Man bomb.
Yeah.
That's what they
Yeah.
did and exploded it in 1949.
All right.
So yeah, and now there's a book about the George Koval that is called "The Sleeper Agent" by Anne Hagedorn, and it's a good book about. She's done a lot of good research on George Koval. He's an interesting character.
Is he still alive
Oh
today?
no, he's not. He passed away.
Yeah. But code name Delmar, I believe. But it kind of makes you wonder sometimes, and I think it's true, is that sometimes the background checks, they kind of let it slip a little bit because they
Yeah.
needed the scientific know-how
They were
more
in a little
right
bit of a
away.
hurry. Yeah, yeah, they were in a little bit of a hurry.
The general, what was it? He said, we're always acting under the principle of it has to be done quicker,
Oh,
quicker.
quicker. Yeah. Well, they thought they were in a race with Germany.
All right. Right, exactly.
All
And
right, so let's come back to your book and talk a little more about what you've written here.
okay,
Tell us how you got the idea, and well, you talked about the transporting of the material, and what
right.
are some of the characters in your book?
Okay. Uh, the main characters, the couriers, are a military policeman. There's a sergeant and a lieutenant
Yeah.
called Sarge and LT, and then the local FBI agent gets mixed in all this, and it's kind of the three of them at the ending of the book that are kind of the posse, I guess you'd say. But there's Soviet agents involved. There's the big plot is the Nazis. They want to use I can point to it here, a buzz bomb to want to steal the enriched uranium and use a buzz bomb launched off a U-boat to create a dirty bomb over New York City. And it's kind of a fantastical plot. Germany is doomed, but they want to. The action takes place in April 1945, and they want to present Hitler with a birthday present of hitting New York City, which was Hitler's fantasy to bomb New York City. But so anyway, it's a fantastical plot where an agent comes in from Germany and he has a partner who is a deep plant who has lived in the United States for years and years. And then also a little comic relief. There's a group of locals, dare I call them hillbillies, that uh, they they want to steal the package. They don't know. Well, they think they know what's in the package, and they want to intercept it on the way from Oak Ridge to the Knoxville train station. And they have a big plan to do that. And basically, the book is everybody has a plan, and they all go awry. You know, and
Great.
then the hero of the book is someone that is, I guess, unanticipated or comes in to save the day. And I there's also a radiologist, a doctor who travels on the train, and he is cheating on his wife, who is she's a welder at the shipyards in Evansville, and she catches wind and comes to Knoxville and is tracking him down. It's kind of a little subplot, I guess. There's a little bit of sex in the story, a little bit of violence. You got to have a little bit of everything in
Yeah, yeah, you do have to put it in.
and but a lot of the incidents and characters and places are true. I'm trying to think of uh, what some of them were, and I tried to think through how these guys would actually make the trip, and
Yeah.
uh, I guess it was an overnight trip, and oh, also the organized crime gets involved in the chase. There's a Oak Ridge or a Knoxville Chicago connection. They got moonshiners in Oak Ridge, send it up to Chicago in exchange for counterfeit war ration stamps
Oh,
and so forth.
well,
And I did a little research into that also, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
it sounds like you took a stab at several different subplots there, and that
Took a little some liberties, but
yes, I understand, and that's very good. Well, when will we have the book? When's it going to be published?
I think it's safe to say next year.
Okay, very good.
What the deal is, I guess, is that I'm so interested in writing my next book,
Mhm.
uh, uh, and maybe I might publish them, uh, kind of one right after the other.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have one in your pocket.
Yes, I
One in your
understand.
pocket. So,
Yeah. Well, tell us a little about the other book, the one you're working on now.
well, it takes place in a city like Nashville during the turn of the century, and it's about body snatchers. It's about getting cadavers for medical usage, and it's kind of the subtext is um, taking bodies of so-called useless people and using them to advance medical science, kind of like eugenics or something like that. And it's the time during the Centennial Exposition in town, and people are disappearing. Visitors are disappearing from the exposition, and there's a gentleman who hit it rich developing the newfangled artificial mechanical refrigeration, making ice and cold storage.
Oh,
And I'll just let you guess what he stores in his cold storage.
right.
Uh, and the another plot is that Vice President Teddy Roosevelt is going to be visiting the exposition, and there's word that he's going to be assassinated during his visit. And one of the security people that works the exposition rode with Teddy on San Juan Hill, and he's going to try and save him. So
Yeah.
that's about as far as I've got with the plot. So
Well, that sounds intriguing.
yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
That's great.
I've got an idea for a third one that
Okay.
occurs during the Civil War, but
Well, you're here in Middle Tennessee where there was a lot of Civil War activity.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the books for some reason involve whiskey.
I
And
wonder why.
yeah, yeah,
It's just a state of Jack Daniels, you know.
right, exactly, exactly. People don't realize that, in the late 1800s, that Robertson County, which is one of the counties bordering Nashville, was the biggest producer of whiskey at that time. I believe they have one distillery there now.
Hmm.
But then all the business moved down to Lincoln County to Jack Daniels and George Dickel and the so-called Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah,
That's
Daniels is in Lynchburg.
correct. Yes.
Yeah, and I was down there not too long ago and took the tour. It's amazing to me how large that operation
Oh
is.
yeah, yeah.
They've
It's
got warehouses all over
mhm.
that area there, and they're literally shipping all over the world.
Oh yes. Hidden in the hills. I'm a Tennessee squire. I own property at the distillery.
Okay, yes,
Uh,
I understand that opportunity.
you can't stand on your property without standing on somebody else's. So
Yeah, well, that's true.
it
It's not that big.
it is. But yeah, I live in Panama City Beach now, Florida, and I kind of miss Tennessee a little bit. But I don't know. Do you have any snow up there?
No, no, not at the present.
Well,
They
we don't either. So
oh yeah, I bet you don't. It's cold here though, so we could see snow about any time.
I
Anymore, we don't get as much as we used to. It's sometimes, well, in February we'll tend to see some snow flurries, and we had a little bit here a week or so ago, just a little. As you know, Crossville, the area on the plateau, is always about 5 degrees colder than either
mhm.
Nashville or Oak Ridge. So I was driving through there when they had snow flurries, and it reminded me just how slick the road can get when it
Oh
starts.
yeah. I went to UT Knoxville. That's the school I went to. So, and my brother lives in Strawberry Plains, so I'm familiar with that area. And I understand, and I don't know if you know much about it, but they have a tour now that starts at Oak Ridge and then goes to Hanford and then goes down to New Mexico and Trinity Site and all that kind of stuff.
That's the Stephen Ambrose historic
Right.
tour, and they came through a couple of years ago now, and I gave them the tour of Oak Ridge like I
Oh,
do.
great.
I've done 27 bus tours since the Oppenheimer movie came out. So
Wow.
tourism has had a boost in Oak Ridge, and of course, Oak Ridge is only mentioned twice in the Oppenheimer movie in
Yeah.
Tennessee, but it was sufficient to increase our tourism. But I gave the tour to the group that was on that tour you're talking about. And
Uh,
as a result of that, they have agreed to let me be the historian on that tour for the next one that's going to be scheduled. And we
oh,
will
wow.
literally start in Oak Ridge and then go to Los Alamos, to Hanford, and also the Trinity site. So we'll hit the major Manhattan Project era sites in the nation on that tour. And I'm
That,
glad to be a part of that.
oh, yeah. That'd
Thank
be
you for mentioning
fantastic.
it. I'll pay you later.
What did you think of the movie?
Oh, I like the movie a lot. We really mistreated Oppenheimer. And the thing that I liked the most about it is that Christopher Nolan took the actual transcript of the hearing and used those exact words. So what you're seeing in that movie are the exact words that were used during the hearing. So it's historically accurate. The only thing I would criticize is that Colonel Nichols never had an office in Los Alamos. He was in Oak Ridge. He only visited Los Alamos twice. He went out there in March of 1943 and then in April of 1945. Now, the conversation between Oppenheimer and Nichols about his security clearance, that did take place, and it's documented in Kai Bird's book, but it actually took place in Chicago. Now, think about this. You're Christopher Nolan. You've got this set all made in Los Alamos. You're doing lots of shooting there, and you've got this one sentence scene that's in
Hmm. Hmm.
Chicago. Well, do you build another Chicago set and make all of the transport to get them there? Not just let it happen in Los Alamos,
Yeah,
which
there
is
you
what
go.
he did. And I would have done the same thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I think the movie is extremely well done. And
Well, you're talking about, I think Nichols probably doesn't get enough credit
oh,
for what he did. Groves got most all the credit,
yeah.
which he
Yeah.
certainly deserved it. But
He did. He did it. He did a great job. But Nichols actually ran the day-to-day activities of the Army
right.
Corps of Engineers and built Oak Ridge. So I mean, he had his home there in Oak Ridge and his office there, but he managed the Corps of Engineer portion of Los Alamos. Oppenheimer had the scientists, but he also had Hanford. So Nichols had responsibility for the day-to-day activities of all three sites
Oh, I
from
didn't
the
realize.
Army's perspective. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm proud to say that his grandniece, Barbara Scollin, has started writing for me. She has written actually 11 columns for my Historically Speaking series on the history of her great uncle, uh, Kenneth Nichols. And I've
Wow.
published about 8 or 9 of them now, and we're going to finish them off here in the next couple of months. And
Hmm.
I think that there's going to be enough material there that we may think in terms of pulling that together for a small booklet or pamphlet or something on Nichols that will help to I hope will help to document. Of course, he wrote document what Nichols did, but of course he wrote a really good book. The Road to Trinity is an excellent book about the Manhattan Project.
Hmm.
But I'm pleased that she chose to write up the columns in Historically Speaking.
Right,
More
right.
insight to the Oak Ridgers about Nichols, as she calls him, the father of Oak Ridge.
From the movie, you kind of get the idea that Nichols was a hard-nosed SOB, which I'm sure that was part of it. But
Well,
you know,
I, I'm sure he was a driver, just like Groves was. But
right, had to be.
yeah, that's interesting. I've also been in contact with General Groves' grandson, Dick Groves. And the interesting thing about him is he he's working on a book now about the Manhattan Project, and actually is working to prepare a documentary series for television. So
Hmm.
he's heavily into the research in the Manhattan Project. His comment about Oppenheimer and his grandfather, he said, "You understand, my grandfather was the son of a preacher. He would have never used the F word."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's true. That's true.
but at any rate, you got to give Christopher Nolan a little bit of liberties uh, to attract the audience the way he thinks best.
And most people don't realize that these men they worked for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers,
Yeah, they
you know,
did.
and
Yeah.
Groves had built the Pentagon before he came to.
Exactly right. That's why he was selected, because of his success with the Pentagon. One of the reasons, and in fact, because of that, he had connections. He knew private industry. He knew how to get them involved in construction projects, and he
Mm.
didn't, he didn't hesitate at all when he brought in Tennessee Eastman to run Y-12, DuPont to run the graphite reactor, and out at Hanford and Stone and Webster to do the building, Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill to do the design for the city. I mean, Groves was reaching out and tapping these key industrial organizations that he thought had the capability to do what needed to be done. And he didn't, I don't believe he hesitated in putting the pressure on them.
Well, yeah, and but he hedged his bets too. They tried several different
Yeah.
processes and used several of them in conjunction with each other, I guess, to
Yeah.
get that final product.
Yeah, they had of course, the first one was the electromagnetic separation at Y12 that
Mhm.
Ernest Lawrence convinced them would be the best way to go, but it turned out to be so slow that was frustrating to both Oppenheimer and Groves. And they come up, and it took a while, but the K-25 gaseous diffusion process, and before they could get it online, they had that steam plant there, and Oppenheimer learned about the Navy using thermal diffusion. So he told Groves, said, we need to build a thermal diffusion plant using that steam and get the first part of the separation done. That's the most difficult part. And of course, Groves agreed right away. And the interesting story I tell is he went to the contractor and said, "I need a thermal diffusion plant built. I need it right here by this steam plant, which was the largest in the world at the time." And he said, "I need it in 90 days." And the contractor said, "I don't think it can be done in 90 days." Groves looked him in the eye and said, "You've got 80 days."
Right. Keep going.
They built it in 76 days, I believe, and operated about 3 weeks or about 3 months. And it's calculated that by doing that, they may have shortened the war by about 3 weeks. So
Wow.
he was, you got to know that he was making these decisions. And by the way, Dick Groves told me, his grandson, said that his grandfather would only take 1 hour to make the most difficult decision. So he literally was a decision maker that made prompt and quick decisions. And
I assume that General Groves drank 10 cups of coffee a day and was a chain smoker, but apparently he liked candy. That was his big
evidently.
thing. And
Evidently. Well, let's see. Let me go back to one other thing you mentioned and let you talk just a bit about this book. You mentioned The Zone. You say it has 50 chapters and one of them is on Oak Ridge.
yes,
Okay.
uh, there may be another one also, but the chapter is just basically on what was needed to build the atomic bomb, and mostly what happened at Oak Ridge.
Yeah, I understand.
Uh, you know
And
the
that book's out and available.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's yeah, it's available on Amazon.com.
Sure.
It's a it's a smaller book than my usual books, but it has things, all kinds of things about, Las Vegas.
Hmm.
About it has some interesting things about the atomic bomb testing in Las Vegas.
Oh,
There's
okay.
a museum there in Las Vegas
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
it's a very good museum. You're
And they
exactly.
used to get on rooftops with their drinks and everything and watch the mushroom clouds out in the desert. People
I
don't
hear
can't
you.
hardly believe that. But
No, that's a time gone by. We're not doing that anymore.
and I have a one chapter called Men Behaving Badly, and it's about all the little wars, the Black Patch War, the Coal Creek War, the Hoodoo War, all those little feuds and wars and so forth back in the day.
Well, you've interested me. I'm going to order that book.
Oh, good, great, great. I'll
And
be glad.
I'll encourage our viewers to remember that he's going to publish this Atomic Express next year, and it's a historical fiction about the couriers from Oak Ridge carrying the uranium 235 to Los Alamos. And
Okay.
obviously, I did enjoy reviewing the book for you, and I hope by making some of the specific comments it was helpful to you. But the themes that run through the book are exciting ones. He's
Mhm.
got a good writing style that I think you'll enjoy. So, thank you, Mark, for spending some time with us this morning and talking about the Atomic Express. I would
Thank you
encourage
very
you
much.
to publish it as soon as you can. Okay.
I'm going to get on it. I'm going to get on it. So
All
thank
right.
thank you very much. Appreciate
You bet. You
talking
bet.
with you.
And folks, for our next Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. We're going to bring back Natasha Benjamin. Benjamin. She is a been on here a time or two before. She's got some books out, and she's also she's working on screenplay, and she's doing some art. And I want to have her just to come back and share with us where she is and what she's doing. So until next time. Thank you for watching.
All right.